Hello and welcome to the all-new, all-different #1 comics podcast. This is episode number 28. I'm Dan. Sitting across from me is Bob. Say hello, Bob.
Hello, Bob.
We are a comic book podcast where each and every week we take a look at a brand new first issue comic book, break down the story and art, give it somewhat of a review and tell you if we think that you should move on to issue number 2 or not. We also talk a little bit of comic book and related news, as well as what's new at comic book shops this and next week. And this week, we will be taking a very, very deep dive into the all-new #1.
From DC Comics, Hawkgirl #1, written by Jadzia Axelrod and drawn by Aman K. Nawalpan.
Bob, I couldn't have said it better myself because I sure as hell tried, and those are names that don't even come close to my wheelhouse.
He did try, folks. It didn't turn out well.
I gave it a shot. We'll give it a shot whenever we get back. We're going to take a quick break. And we are back with the all-new, all-different #1 comics podcast. Bob, let's give them a little bit of news.
There's news?
Man, there's news. It might not be the most interesting news in the entire world to you, but to me and all of my, 6-year-old glory, there's some good news.
Thank you, James, for not creating a black hole in the news category.
Yeah, and ironically enough, none of my news is DC or DCEU related whatsoever. So not even James Gunn adjacent. There's nothing there. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was we found out this week that Netflix has dropped Masters of the Universe. They're not going to produce whatever they were going to do before, whether it was a movie or a series.
I was reading right before we started doing this podcast that they had already sunk, $30 million into a Master of the Universe movie.
Wow.
And I guess at this point in time, they're shopping it around. I guess the creators are. Mm-hmm. So Amazon, if you're listening, please, I want this movie to happen.
So just somewhere to release it, like somewhere to, feature it or whatever.
Right. If it's a live action, $30 million is a start. But of course, as the live action movies go, that's not even a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, so I'm guessing there's no hope that this thing can go to theaters or anything. It's got to go straight to streaming, I guess.
Considering how the last He-Man movie worked out, probably not.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's definitely something there to... obviously, there's something there in Masters of the Universe to, appeal to people like you and I on the screen, whether it's the small screen or the big screen or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think I would like to see a 2020-something's He-Man movie, a Masters of the Universe
just
movie.
As long
big
as it's,
budget.
Just as long as it's not Dolph Lundgren.
Oh, Dolph Lundgren is in there in a cameo at some spot.
B, it takes place on Earth.
Well, on Earth. I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, look, if they can make Thor, and I know Thor had a lot more money than $30 million behind it, but... Right. I don't know. I mean, if you can do Thor, you can do Masters of the Universe. Like, I'm not saying they're similar, but as far as as far as looks, as far as CG and everything goes, set design, all of that, taking itself seriously enough, like you can definitely do a good Masters of the Universe movie. That's something that I'd really like to see. I was scared, like I said, I was scared of Thor at first. Whenever Thor was announced, I thought, how the hell can you make a Thor movie? Thor is so boring that. The way that they talk, like everything, there's no way to make this happen.
Well, and I was especially worried when they announced Kenneth Branagh as director, considering the only thing of note I'd seen from Kenneth Branagh is his take is Loveless in Wild Wild West with Will Smith.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, wonderful movie. Giant mechanical spiders and everything. So, yeah, I mean, look, if they can get Wild Wild West into the theaters, why can't we get a Masters of the Universe in theaters? Is my question.
Very true.
Up next is we got. I don't know. I don't know if this was a surprise to you or the listening audience or not, but we got news that a live action Gargoyles movie is going to happen.
A buddy of mine, I sent a message to a buddy of mine, texted to a buddy of mine, who's a big Gargoyles fan.
Oh, okay. And, so they exist,
right?
Wow.
Exactly. And we were talking back and forth about this, and my biggest thing is, would a live action Gargoyles movie work?
That's what I'm wondering. How do you make it work?
I don't know, and his response was it'd be as live action as, say, The Lion King was.
Yeah, like the backgrounds are real, but
right.
all of the creatures are CG. Of course, I mean...
Right, because I would expect a movie like Gargoyles would have to be CGI heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what's funny? Speaking of that, this has, I don't know, not really much to do with anything. I got bored last night. I was, I don't know, kind of...
So you watched it for the 8th time?
No, I did not watch that.
Man.
But I was, I don't know, searching around on various streaming platforms that are on my TV, and right. I came across Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I thought to myself,
movie.
I have not watched this movie since I was a kid. Like, I haven't watched that, and I haven't watched Dick Tracy. Like, those two movies just in my mind, like, you know, were big for me when I was a little kid, but I never revisited them. Now I've watched like The Mask and things like that again, but right. like I haven't watched those two. Right. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I turned on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I made it probably about 30 minutes in before I fell asleep. But so interesting, so innovative, the way that Robert Zemeckis, and then, I mean, you know, he just directed the thing or whatever, but the way that team was able to combine the live action and animation on like such a big screen and make it look so good.
I know, in the fact that movie was made when?
Yeah,
and it still looks better than a lot of the movies nowadays?
Yeah, it had to have been like 90, 91, maybe before that. Was it in the 80s? I can't remember. But
something like that.
Yeah, super, super interesting. But yeah, a live action Gargoyles. I wonder what that means. I hope we get some more news about it coming up. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's not just dead in the water because, I mean, obviously we all know the SAG strike right now. We have the writer's strike and everything. There's some demands that are starting to be met, but I think that the negotiations aren't going so great right now. We obviously saw yesterday, I don't know if you saw this or not, Bob, but where the picket lines were and everything, they had landscapers come out and completely take all of the greenery off the trees, so that way they were standing in direct sunlight. So yes, it's pretty bad. Not a good look. So
that's kind of petty.
Yeah.
Now the only thing I've seen so far as the writer's strike is, and I'm sure you saw this too. One of the head writers on the Miss Marvel Disney Plus.
Yep.
Has been, heavily criticizing not getting, paid as much as she should have.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, is horrible in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And there's we're getting some insight into that industry right now because somebody as big as Mandy Moore I saw yesterday came out and said that one of her royalty checks for the really, really popular show, which I can't remember what network it was on, but it was called This Is Us. Big, huge show with Milo from Gilmore Girls and Heroes and all of that was on it, and then Mandy Moore, she got a residual 1 penny check sent to her. Mandy Moore's a big star, she's a big actress. Just yeah, pretty crazy how that whole thing's working and what's going on there, but yeah, that's just a side note. We're obviously not here to talk about the writer's strike.
Hopefully, for everybody's sake, this gets resolved sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you and I had talked a little bit about possibly reaching out to some actors, voice actors, whatever, and then we saw, this was right whenever the strikes first really started to really ramp up, and then we saw, and the literature that they put out that they're not doing podcast appearances.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah, for not only for entertainment's sake, but yeah, I mean for our sake, we can't even ask people to come on right now. So
right.
Kind of sad, but yeah, that's happening. So possibly we'll see a Gargoyles live action movie at some point. Maybe not. Maybe we'll get some more details. Maybe Bob will be cast in the lead role as Gargoyle number 1. But Only time will tell. I don't even remember any of those gargoyle names. Like
I wasn't a greatly big fan, so
I mean, I thought it looked really, really cool, but I definitely didn't get into it as much as
for the time, animation at that time, Fox was killing it as far as animation.
Absolutely. The next thing I want to talk about, Bob, we're getting a new Thunderbolts #1. Thunderbolts is coming back out. I think that we talked about this a couple of weeks ago whenever we were talking about the anticipation rankings of the MCU, or all the comic book movies coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew we'd be getting a new Thunderbolts #1 at some point. This is pretty far away from the movie at this point, but we've got a new Thunderbolts team. So I just wanted to kind of list off who's on this new team and maybe get some reactions on it. But of course, it's going to be led by Hawkeye. So we have Hawkeye as the leader of the team, who's, I don't know, he's been a leader of the Thunderbolts before. So no big surprise there or whatever, just bringing in a classic. Then we have Spectrum, a.k.a. Monica Rambeau, a.k.a. Photon. I didn't even know her name was Spectrum right now, so it shows how far removed I am.
Mm-hmm.
We've got America Chavez. I'm excited about that one. I really like America Chavez. I like that last miniseries that came out was really, really good. Of course, America Chavez, always on a team. She's been on A-Force, West Coast Avengers, Young Avengers, Ultimates, all that. We've got Power Man. So Power Man.
Not to be confused with Luke Cage.
Yeah, sure. Victor Alvarez. He's going to be on the team there. And we've got Persuasion, a.k.a. Kara Kilgrave, a.k.a. the Purple Man's daughter. So not so much of a one of those classic my dad's a villain but I'm a hero situations.
That should be her code name, the Purple Man's daughter.
Yeah, I like it.
You have the Joker's daughter. Come on.
Yeah, and I mean her name's Persuasion, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It feels like a lost opportunity to not call her like the Purple Persuasion or something. I don't know.
That sounds like, I'm not gonna lie, that sounds like a new kind of street drug.
You heard it here first, kids. Bob's got a new street drug. And then we have a new character that I don't know anything about. I assume his first appearance is going to be in this Thunderbolts #1, Guts and Glory. And that's a name.
What a pun.
Yeah, and I mean, to tell you the truth, he just looks like Cable with different hair.
Yeah, I mean, he's even got the psionic glowing eye.
Yeah, so I want to read like their little excerpt here on Marvel about him. Finally meet Guts and Glory, the newest superpowered soldier in town. Not much is known about Gutson yet, other than he has a mysterious past and is an experienced cyber soldier. So,
I'm hoping they don't do the whole thing where it's Cable, but you're not supposed to know.
Yeah,
because that is a trope in comics.
I mean, if that's Cable and we're not supposed to know, then I already know. It looks like Cable. Could it just be like, I don't know, in issue #3 or something, all of a sudden he takes off the black wig and it's just Cable underneath? And like, oh my god, I can't believe it.
The only thing that screams it's not Cable is just the fact that his arm isn't techno.
I don't know, man. I'm seeing some techno on his arm there. I mean, it's not fully techno.
Not as extensive as
Cable. Sure. It's just got a couple of little things. But what are those things? Sorry, this is a visual media, or not a visual medium.
Well, Dr. Afra's got the electro tattoos.
Sure, it kind of looks like those. Yeah,
could be a Star Wars Marvel crossover.
We get our first crossover. I like it. Anyways, look out for Thunderbolts #1 to drop in your local comic book shop on August 31st. And you can check out that team for yourself. The last little bit of news I want to talk about is, Bob, I know you had some thoughts on this. It's been announced now that my beloved Kamala Khan is going to be resurrected from the dead, thank God. But, her death only lasted, a minute, and now she is a mutant. Did we see this coming?
And again, I was texting with a good buddy of mine, and he texted me out of the blue asking me if they killed Kamala Khan just to bring her back to as a mutant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it got me thinking, that's exactly what they did. And then I'm just thinking to myself, that is one of the cheapest ploys ever.
Yeah, like, was there any other way to make her a mutant? I mean, you can do anything you want. You know, why do we need to kill her to bring her back as a mutant?
And I mean, I don't want to totally just crap on when we were originally talking about this, and when we found out that writers were told to, stay away from cons and all that. But now that we know what we know, I mean, it's kind of like, why kill her in the first place?
Yeah, you could have done anything else with her.
Right.
Let her go off to Krakoa. Let another Terrigen mist storm come through, and then reverse her inhuman powers. I don't know. You could have done anything. It's comics, so why kill her? But
I'm really not digging this. I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like what they did, but I do like the fact that obviously she's coming back. She's a mutant, and the new series is co-written by, and you'll have to forgive me if I say the name wrong, Iman Vellani is what I'm going to say. The actress that plays
I believe you did correctly.
So I'm really excited about that. Look, this is somebody who is really, really into the character and really, really into comic books. People always say, why do we cast these people who don't read comics, who don't know anything about comics? Like, that's your answer right there. This girl loves comic books. She shows up at comic book shops. She buys comic books. She reads them. She's photographed like at local comic book shops, just walking in and picking up Miss Marvel comics. Like, she's the real deal. And now she's writing one. She is not. It's not lip service. It's not saying like, oh, well, I picked this up to study the character or whatever. Like, this is like basically like a fangirl who got cast as the character. So I'm really, really into that. I'm really happy that she's writing it. I think that's going to be really cool. And she's co-writing it with somebody else, not a name that I can pronounce, but yes, I'm kind of excited about this. It should be cool. I don't know. I feel you. Like, it's definitely cheap. It's cheap that they killed her. It sucks that they killed her. I'm glad she's coming back, though. I can't believe, I can believe, but they didn't let her stay dead very long.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, in comics, of course, everybody knows death doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
But, I mean, Cap was dead for the better part of, what, a year? Wolverine was dead for the better part of, what, almost a year.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of when they kill a character off and just bring her back maybe, a few issues later.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you. It's so cheap, just to do it that way. I want to read kind of like a little bit of this article from Marvel.com. And again, this is from Marvel.com. This isn't my opinion or anything. This is I'm completely just reading word for word what they wrote here. But I want to make it very, very clear that we are not retconning her inhuman origin. That's a part of Camilla's identity, and that Marvel editor and myself would much like to keep and protect. Vellani shared, our book will absolutely reflect all those core themes of identity that Miss Marvel comics have consistently explored. Only now there's a whole new label that Kamala has to learn and accept. It's going to be pretty crazy. And then, she goes into some other things here on this article. But basically, we're going to learn kind of what happened to her, how she's resurrected and everything in an X-Men Hellfire Gala one-shot. So, for all intent and purposes, as much as I'm, reading about this and everything, Kamala's about to be an X-Men. Like,
right.
Yeah, so she's going to be a mutant. She's going to be an X-Man. I don't know, man. Like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about her joining the X-Men? She's been part of a team before, of course, Champions. I'm trying to think if there's any other team she's been on. I'm sure, but I know. Oh, sorry. Of course, the Inhumans, and then she's been an Avenger at some point, I think. Right.
Right.
She's been on the Avengers. Okay, so she's a team player already, but yeah, we're gonna throw her on the X-Men here. I don't know. Newest mutant on the X-Men.
Well, see, and I'm going to expound on what what she was quoted as saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't exactly know how you can say that they're not retconning her Inhuman heritage. Because inherently, by saying she's a mutant, inherently, you basically are retconning that she was an Inhuman. I mean, I guess they could skirt the line where she's both an Inhuman and a mutant. Like, maybe she had the mutant gene, but the Terrigenesis just accelerated the mutant gene.
Yeah.
I could see that, but again, I just don't see how this can't be retconning her Inhuman heritage.
I wonder the same thing. I think this will be very interesting how this ends up playing out. I don't know. I'm reading here, we're going to get, so after that Hellfire Gala one shot, we will get Miss Marvel, the New Mutant #1. It's a 4-part mini. As I said, co-written by Iman Vellani and someone else. and it goes on sale August 30th. So right at the same time as that new Thunderbolts book, we'll also get this book. And it should be very interesting. I'm very interested to see this. I think one of the biggest questions I'm going to have is her relationship with her family going to be the same? Is she still going to have that relationship with her family? I mean, hopefully that doesn't change, just because she's brought back from the dead.
Or her overall relationship with the public in general. Because we know how mutants are feared and hated.
Sure. The reason I say this stuff about her family, though, is, I mean, if you read Miss Marvel comics, like, it's very focused around her family. It's like you take that element of Peter Parker with Aunt May and all of that stuff and everything, and then you just turn it up to like 100 with her family. Like, everything is, most of the stories are about her and her family. Of course, it's got her superheroing and everything, but she goes home and she has to deal with her family, and it's very, big on her culture and all of that. So yeah, I hope that doesn't change, but I guess we'll see. I think it's in pretty good hands with the creators here, so hopefully all is well with that. I don't know, Bob. That's pretty much all the news I got this week, unless you got anything you want to add in.
I have none.
All right. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back with episode number 28 of the all-new, all-different #1 Comics podcast. Bob, we're going to talk about some new books that dropped in local comic book shops this week. That is right, kids. You can still go out and pick these books up if you have not. This is not a comprehensive list of every book that came out. These are just some highlights. But to get us started...
Disclaimer.
Yeah. To get us started from Image Comics, we had Big Game #1, a Mark Millar book. And as you know, you probably want to get invested in the Mark Millar universe. He's got a great deal with my most hated streaming service of Netflix, but you might want to check that out. We also had a new #1 called Scrapper #1 that has something to do with a dog. I don't know what. Over to DC Comics, we had, that's right, kids, Night Terrors, Night Terror, Catwoman, Night Terrors, Nightwing, Night Terrors, Punchline, Night Terrors, Superman, can't wait to read that one, Bob, and Night Terrors, Wonder Woman, as well as Tales of the Teen Titans. That's, I think, that's a 104, 106, something like that. It's a mini-series.
Like that.
Either way, look, that Superman Night Terrors, I honestly can't wait for it. It's got some cool concepts in it. And then it's written by the same creative team and everything as the regular book, so it should be really cool.
Yeah.
If you guys remember checking out our episode of Superman #1, just a really, really good book. I'm still really enjoying it as well. So
let's see what Superman's afraid of.
Yeah, the Nightly Planet, apparently. So
yeah.
Over to Marvel Comics, we got a new volume of Blade. We've got Blade #1. We have Deadpool Batter Blood, issue #2. We've got Extreme Venomverse, issue number 5.
Which introduces one of the coolest variants of Venom.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Major League Venom. He's front and center on the cover there, and I did pick up that 1 in 25 variant that's got him solo on the cover. Looks so cool.
Yes.
Hopefully that one pays off. Either way, I'm hanging on to it. We also got Moon Knight City of the Dead, number 1, with the first proper appearance of the third Scarlet Scarab. I don't know. We'll find out. She's got a cool cover on one of those, though. Also, from IDW, we got Star Trek Day of Blood. That's right. It's not Star Wars Day of Blood. It's Star Trek Day of Blood.
I may walk out right now if you call it Star Wars.
Yeah, I'll try not to. We also got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin Lost Day Special. So, milk that Last Ronin for all you can. IDW. I would too. Why not?
IDW is certainly milking it.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We're getting some cool Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stories as a byproduct, so that's okay. I'll deal with it. For now, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Pick it up. And we are back. This is episode number 28. This is the all new, all different number 1 comics podcast. Bob, we are going to go over the main attraction, Hawkgirl, number 1 from DC Comics. I'm going to read a quick synopsis from DC Comics website itself. Soaring to new heights and battling new foes, Kendra Saunders, the winged warrior better known as Hawkgirl, has been one of the DCU's greatest heroes for a long time, serving as a member of both the Justice League and Justice Society. But with the Justice League disbanded, Kendra decides she needs a fresh start and heads to Metropolis to begin a new life. That life is quickly interrupted by a mysterious villain with a powerful connection to the nth metal that makes up Hawkgirl's wings and weapons. A brand new adventure with sky-high action, adventure, and intrigue begins here.
The puns.
Yeah, I know. And I felt like they put adventure right next to the word adventure, but that's all right. Oh. I got a little tripped up there.
Well, I mean, at least it sounded like the book that we actually read, so
it
that's
definitely did. I'll give them that. I'll definitely give them that one. Bob, let's talk about these creators a little bit. Please, for the love of God, everyone forgive me if I stumble on these names. I'm not great at pronouncing names, and these are names. If you guys are listening out there, of course, as always, please come on the podcast and teach us how to say your names correctly, because I clearly can't even say the word podcast correctly.
And you haven't even gotten to the names yet.
Yeah, I'm getting a little scared here. So, on writing duty this time, we have Jadzia Axelrod. I may have nailed that.
Yes.
All right, we're going to give myself a round of applause there. Wonderful job to me.
Now for the artist.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm going to go into Jadzia for a second.
Okay.
We're going to read a little excerpt off of Jadzia's website itself, because there's actually not a lot of credits to Jadzia Axelrod here that I'm seeing. Just mainly we're seeing DC stuff. Starts in around 2021 with Wonderful Women of the World, a DC Comics book, as well as DC Pride books, and then of course creating one of the characters that comes out of this book, Galaxy the Prettiest Star. But again, I do want to read off of Jadzia's own website here for a bio and synopsis of Jadzia. Jadzia Axelrod is an author, an illustrator, and a world changer. Throughout her eventful life, she's also been a circus performer, a puppeteer, a graphic designer, a sculptor, a costume designer, a podcaster, and quite a few other things that she's lost track of, but will no doubt remember when the situation calls for it. But that quote-unquote author business, that seems to be the one she keeps coming back to. So that is just a little bit about Jadzia there. Yes, a very eventful life so far. That's why I wanted to wait and say that live on the air to you, Bob, but right. I made a little note earlier when I said, you were talking about the books that Jadzia had done, and I was like, well, amongst other things, because I had kind of read that there, and I was just, wow, I mean, you start throwing in things like costume design, sculpting, all of that. It's pretty damn impressive.
Right.
Puppeteering, I don't know. That just kind of scares me. But hey, whatever. It's each their own.
Yeah, so if the I'm definitely sure it will, but if the writing thing doesn't quite work out, she's definitely got a lot of other avenues to fall onto.
Yeah, she might have a backup plan or something, or two, or three, or
just a little bit.
Maybe I don't know. I would imagine if you're a sculptor, I mean that probably pays pretty well. there's probably something to pay the bills in there. But yeah, kind of a newcomer to comics. Looks like that's just within the last couple of years, but pretty much exclusively over at DC from what I can see. Mm-hmm. But again, feel free to check out Jadzia Axelrod's website there for a little bit more information about some of her projects and everything, and that is JAREDAXELROD.com. So feel free to check that out for a little bit further information. Let's go into the artist for a second, and here's where there's no hope. I'll never get this name right. I'm gonna go with M&K Noelpen.
Close enough.
Okay. Well, close enough. Not the worst thing I've ever said.
No.
Okay.
No.
And this happens to be one of those illustrators where I could sit here and read titles for an hour, but I won't. I would say more than anything else, looks like Emin Wei has been an illustrator on Crush and Lobo, the book that came out just a couple of years ago in 2021. Done some work on Justice League Dark, on Gotham City Monsters, Detective Comics, Wonder Woman, The Flash. Lots of stuff, again, pretty much exclusively over at DC. I am seeing a RoboCop book, though. I don't know if that was just for cover or something, but a lot of stuff over at DC. And I'm going to read a little bit off of his website as well. This is his synopsis a little bit longer, but M&K Noelpen is an American comic, I don't know where I got American from, is a comic artist and writer. He was born in Vancouver, Canada, and grew up in Chile. Chile, okay. Yeah, let me sound somewhat educated. He returned to Vancouver in 2009. He then spent the following years between Europe, Vancouver, San Francisco, and Asia until he returned to Chile in 2016. DC Comics Talent Workshop 2017 alumni. I don't know, however you say that. And then, of course, give some of his works here. DC presents DC Beach Blanket Bad Guy Special Nightwing, DC Comics Nuclear Winter Special, New Talent Showcase 2018, DC Mysteries of Love Special, High Level, Batman Secret Files, Gotham City Monsters, Justice League Dark, Crush and Lobo, Detective Comics, Batman Urban Legends, The Flash, Nubia, and the Justice League, Wonder Woman, Hawkgirl, Collects It, The Young Terrorist, Clandesto, Boy, RoboCop, and something else that I can't pronounce. So, yes, that is our artist there. And Bob, let's get over to this book then. Let's talk about this book. I'm really quick going to try to read my synopsis that I probably won't even say as elegantly as I just said those names. So, my synopsis is Hawkgirl opens with Marine, aka Permafrost, I think, right? Is that supposed to be Permafrost?
I'm assuming you would know more than I would.
Well, she's got the hair and her name is Marine, so I'm going to go with Permafrost. Let's say. All right, Permafrost, I think. Walking home with some groceries on a crowded, rainy metropolis street when our newest villain, Velpeka, offers her a hand. Flashback to 50 years ago when the two first meet, and notice there that Velpeka is looking the exact same as she did 50 years ago. She offers Marine a necklace, and as long as she agrees to never take it off in exchange for anything that she wants, it's a pretty damn good deal, as long as she asks Velpeka and invites her, very importantly, invites her in, because she must be invited. We then see Marine in modern day times riding a horse wearing the necklace and being attacked by a creature that looks like... Look, Bob, I'm going to say this creature looks like a fox, but a werewolf. So is it a werefox?
Just think a fox mixed with a werewolf by night.
I'm going with a werefox. I don't know enough about DC lore to know if this is an existing character, but it does kind of resemble Who's on Her Necklace, maybe. So I'm not too sure there. Modern day Metropolis shows Hawkgirl alongside Superman and Black Canary as they battle some fiery aliens, just as Hawkgirl is attacked and she can no longer use her wings. Newcomer hero Galaxy shows up to help, and as she defeats all of the fire aliens. But Kendra tells Galaxy to leave the superheroing to the professionals and sends her away. Kendra then meets an old college friend for lunch, and as she hits on Kendra says that she has to leave instantly and gets up and goes. Flash over to Valpeka as she puts Marine in a tank filled with some liquid and tries to open a gateway to the Nth World. Kendra calls Batman and asks about Galaxy because we have to have Batman in a DC comic for no apparent reason. And then we flash back over to...
Because it's Batman.
Yeah, exactly. What would this comic be without Batman? I certainly would have no idea what's going on or be able to sell this book without Batman in it.
Thank you, Batman.
Yes, thank you for all of your hard work, Bruce Wayne, a.k.a. Batman. We flash over to Valpeka as the gateway is opening, but then it closes before she can enter. And now we go over to Galaxy in her apartment with her dog and her girlfriend as they talk about how Hawkgirl won't just be stopping by for a sleepover, and then what happens, Bob? She comes crashing through the window and the book ends. So yeah, a pretty action-packed book. A lot is happening here. Yep. A lot is going on. Yep. And man, I hate to sound like a broken record because I say this almost every podcast now, but I did not like this book the first time I read it. I was honestly turned off by the amount of dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I thought there was too much flashing back and forth. I thought that the scene with Black Canary and Superman was just not needed. And then after I read it that second time, it really put things into perspective and I really got into it a little more. But I'll save that for my review here. Let's talk about the story. What about these beats? They go all over the place, man. We are everywhere. We've got flashbacks to 50 years ago. We've got current day. We've got yesterday. We've got, everything is going on. But how did you feel they worked for this comic?
For this comic and, dealing with all the, flashbacks, inner monologuing, all that. Mm-hmm. I thought it worked. I mean, personally, I like more of a, and you're the same, you like more of a linear set of beats, going from A to B to C to D to E. Mm-hmm. And this, of course, with all the flashbacks and inner monologuing and all that, we didn't get that. But I thought it worked pretty well. I mean, it was still all over the place, but you could still understand what was going on.
And let me go back to how I said, I read this twice and all of that jazz that I always say. I think that I liked it a lot. I like the way that this is cut up. It's almost reminding me of we were talking earlier about Gargoyles and stuff, and Batman the Animated Series comes to mind and stuff like that. But the way like a cartoon feels, those kind of like. We're talking about Masters of the Universe earlier. Like I kind of just get that vibe. Like we're cutting to one thing, going to another scene. It's working. It's working well for me actually. On the second read, the only thing that I didn't quite get was what was the point of her meeting the college friend. What was the purpose there? Was that planting a seed, or was that just for us to see the flashback of Kendra as like shaved head, Black Lives Matter T-shirt, And what was going on there? I'm a little confused by that. I don't have any problem with it. I'm fine if that's who Kendra was in college. I absolutely have no issues with that. I'm just wondering if that was the purpose, or if the purpose was to plant a seed for that character later. I'm just a little confused as to what it was. Doesn't matter either way. Just a little confused.
The only thing I can think of, because I was the same with you when they got to that scene. She was talking to, who was it? Black Canary about meeting a friend, an old friend from college who she hasn't seen in a while. Yep. The only thing that came to mind about that scene, and again, I could be completely off base with this hypothesis I'm about to throw out, but the only thing I can think is maybe it was just, a setup to humanize her and Maureen's relationship because of what happens at the end of this book. That could be, is she gonna have to come to blows with Maureen? And that's the only thing I'm thinking, that scene could have been just to set up, her and Maureen's relationship.
Yeah, definitely very, very interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I think the story beats worked very well here. They were creative. They were different than that linear story that we're used to and that we're more fans of. But I like to challenge that. I like to see something different. I can't see the same story every time, week after week here.
And you are correct. It did remind me of a early to mid 90s cartoon episode.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a win. How about the narrative then? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say we kind of drop this every time we talk about DC. I hardly know anything about DC Comics. I'm not a huge DC Comics reader. Neither are you.
Right.
I don't know all the lore. I don't know all the backstory.
Right.
I think you can jump in this without knowing anything and still be okay. I think you might be a little confused by certain things, but I don't think that's much of a problem. We're seeing the introduction of 2 brand new characters here that the book is semi-focused on. And then I don't think you really need to know that much about Hawkgirl. Like, it explains enough about her wings and drops enough about the nth metal and all of that in there for you to catch up.
Right.
But as far as these characters' individual voices, let's kind of group this together again, the dialogue and the narrative. How did you feel their voices were on the page? Like, did you feel like it was tied directly to any individual character?
I thought the dialogue worked. You had the dialogue for Galaxy, where she was that spunky newcomer.
Yep.
Sense of hope and
yes.
righteousness.
Yeah,
you had Hawkgirl, who is definitely. If you have. You don't need to know anything about the character, but if you have seen like the Justice League cartoons, or something, her, Shiara, their personalities are kind of, that whole guarded, I should be stronger than this, get defensive at times, so she sounded exactly like that. The little bit that Superman was in there, his dialogue was definitely the, very optimistic, everything's going to work out.
Yep.
So I thought the dialogue was good for these characters.
Yeah, I thought it was too. I think everybody had an individualized voice and it worked well. I'm liking, you've got it open to the beginning of the book here, and it's got, this narrative that's playing out that, of course, is like the overarching narrative that, someone telling a story or whatever. I'm kind of liking that. It sets a tone. If you're not looking at the book in front of you, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about unless you've read it. But that's just a little Easter egg to anybody who's reading it or whatever. But I think all of that works. I think everybody's voice works here. I think it's not a complaint. My only critique is, we all know this is too much dialogue. For me, this is way too much. I'm always a fan of less is more on the dialogue, on the storytelling in a comic book. I think that it should be more visual than this, and this is kind of clouding up the really great artwork with a lot of dialogue and that's whatever. But this is reminding me more of like those 90s comics. I feel like I'm taking a step back in time and reading Fantastic Four from 1993 or something, and there's just a lot of dialogue in there. I don't have any problem with the dialogue. This is actually written very well. All the characters' voices, again, are very well and distinguished and everything. There's just a lot of dialogue. So that's going to be my critique of that. How about the world building, Bob? How about we're dropped into Metropolis here? We've got some new characters. We've got some existing characters. We've got the tentpole of DC Comics Batman. How did you feel about their worlds here? And Who allowed? I guess Batman didn't leave Gotham. Never mind. I was going to say who allowed Batman into Metropolis, but I guess he's just on the phone, so or psychic connection or whatever's happening there. So.
Well, I mean, as far as the world building, I mean, if you've seen Metropolis once,
yeah,
you know what Metropolis is. I mean, they showed the background with the Daily Planet in it.
Yep.
I mean, not being a real big, Superman fan, I mean, I've got it open and there's a panel with a locale Cafe Monsoon. I mean, I don't know if they've ever shown that in a Superman comic. Not being a big Superman fan, but again, if you've seen Metropolis, I mean, you can go to Metropolis in any other comic and you know what Metropolis is. So I think the world building was definitely on par.
Yeah, I think the world building worked really well too. I mean, look, we've got our locations, we've got Metropolis and all of that. I like this whole world here because, again, we're kind of going back and forth. Yeah, we've got the city of Metropolis, we've got Marine walking around, we've got Velpaca. I like the big city scene where Black Canary, Superman, and Hawkgirl are fighting the aliens. I think that works well. That gives me that whole cool Avengers fighting the aliens vibe or whatever.
Right.
The sky opening up and these aliens coming out and they're fighting them, whatever.
Right.
We've got the cool warehouse scenes where, for some reason in every comic book universe, there's always these weird supervillain layers where they have these vaults of some kind of liquid that they can put people in and it's constructed nicely and everything. I like that. That's cool. Yeah, everything works here. It's great. I think that the world building is done very well, and I like it. Let's go into the art then. I don't know. I don't have the artist name in front of me again, but okay. Well, yeah, we'll let you stick with that. But yeah, how do you feel about his art here? And of course, I don't know if we'll be able to credit these other artists from the book. We've got additional colorist and letters by someone, but we can get into that in a moment. Let's go into the character designs here. Let's go into how he's doing these characters. We've got kind of an ensemble. We've got Galaxy, a newer hero for you and I, Bob. I mean, this character has been created, and as we stated before, has been in her own book that the writer created. But I'm really, really liking that design. It's very cool. It's very hip and new and fresh looking. I like the way that Hawkgirl looks. She looks like she's depicted how I normally see her. She looks wonderful.
Right.
Of course, we get Bob's favorite part of the Holy Trinity, Superman and Batman in here. So they look good. They look like
we don't get Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got Black Canary, so we could have used Wonder Woman, But yeah, how do you feel? How are you feeling about all of these characters here?
And you brought it up perfectly. I mean, each character is individualized. I mean, we've all seen books where the characters just seem like they're the same.
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, everybody's drawn differently. I mean, Galaxy has that kind of Starfire-ish vibe, without being Starfire.
Yeah, it's different enough, but yeah, I get what you're saying. It's that whole alien kind of bright color look, kind of young and fresh look to her. Right.
I mean, you got Kendra, who you can definitely tell she's designed as badass.
Yep.
I mean, she's got the six pack. I mean, she's got arms. She's got guns that could kill you.
Yeah, I love the scene where she stands up from the table where she's meeting the college friend, and she just she's cut. She looks terrifying. If I saw her stand up in public, I think I'd run the other way very quickly. Looks like she would just pick me up and snap me like a twig. So
exactly.
I don't know. She looks very intimidating.
And then just fly away laughing.
Yeah, exactly. Just agreed. No, this. Man, let me tell you this right off the bat. We're going to go through the rest of our critiques of the art here. We've got locations, background, and colors still to talk about. But I'm gonna go out right here and say this is a very, very good artist. I really, really like his artwork. He is very, very detailed. This might be one of my favorite artists we've covered on the podcast so far. At least as far as artists that I don't know anything about, that I'm just being introduced to and being aware of the artist or whatever. This is some great art because number one, it's DC house style. This is kind of what I expect from a DC book, but it's sharpened so well and it's done so precise and everything looks so good and I can't find any flaws anywhere. I really, really like it a lot. So that's a spoiler for, kind of the end of our review on the art before we get through everything. I'm really liking it. Let's go into the locations then. We talked about Metropolis before and how it looks like Metropolis, and we talked about some of these other places when we were talking about world building, but I don't see any need to sit here and say the same thing and recycle what we've already said over and over again. It works very well. It's done very well. Some good locations for me. I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add to that, Bob.
No, for me the locations and backgrounds most can be lumped into one category.
Yep.
And again, like I always say, my biggest thing as far as backgrounds is detail.
Yeah.
Detail.
Fill those things in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't just be that bland, nondescript backgrounds that we've seen before. And this book definitely does not have the drab, nondescript backgrounds.
No, this is ramped up to 100. This is really good. All right, well then let's get into colors, and I will credit Bob. I'm gonna struggle with that first name there.
Adriana Lucas.
Okay. It is that simple. Adriana. Okay, sorry. Adriana Lucas on colors here, and man, again, these colors just really pop throughout the whole thing.
They do.
I'm loving Galaxy's design. I really, really like it a lot. And like you said, earlier, Galaxy has this fresh perspective. She's this new hero who's new to the game, and she's very optimistic and everything. And I don't know, I feel like that's how the character looks too. It's kind of synonymous with her look and everything. She's just bright and hopeful. She's got this cool little dog with her. I don't know what kind of dog that is, but I like the dog kind of hanging around in the panels with her and back at home and everything. I don't know. I think, as far as art goes, I'm going to find it very hard to critique anything in this because I really like it a lot. Bob, let's go into the important question then. What do you think? Are you moving on to issue number 2? Is this a yes? Is this a no?
I think I am moving on to issue 2, especially with that little bit of a cliffhanger and ending. I do enjoy those cliffhanger endings.
Yeah, likewise.
For the issue 1s.
I think it's a corgi. Maybe that's the kind of dog it's supposed to be. Sorry, thought I'd throw that out. You have it open to the page with the dog. So, for me, man, okay. Here's where I'm going to go, and I'm going to, throw a little bit of anticipation out there, I guess. But I talked about this already. I've talked about this on previous episodes. I read, at the very least, I have to read a comic book twice.
Right.
I cannot form an opinion. Now sometimes if I'm just following a series or whatever and the newest issue comes out, I may just read it once and then put it down.
But if you're just reading an issue 1 with knowing nothing about it, then I can see you having to read issues twice.
Yeah, I really like to fully form an opinion. I don't think that I can do that on one. And a lot of times I'm honestly not sold on the book until I read it that second time.
Right.
I don't know why. I mean, maybe that's just my very simple brain and that's how it works. But it's like I lay a foundation and then I can build upon that. This book, I didn't dislike the first time I read it, but for one thing, all of that dialogue really turned me off. All of this globe trotting around Metropolis kind of turned me off a little bit, and I just wasn't sold. And then I don't have the whole full backstory of Hawkgirl and all of that. Man, when I read this the second time and sat here and talked about it and all of that, I want issue number 2 to come out tomorrow. Like I'm absolutely 110% picking up the next issue. I think that this was written so well. I think that the story that they're telling is so compelling, And I think the artwork is, like I said, ramped up to 120%. It's so good. I want to know so much more about Valpaca. I want to know a lot more about Galaxy, to the point where now I'm going to go out and seek out Galaxy's first appearance and read that book because I just want to know more about her. I want to know more about Hawkgirl, a character that I've never been the slightest bit interested in. I really, really like this book a lot.
I gotta say, one of the biggest things I want to know is what happened to Marine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what is going on here?
Yes.
I even want to know, some more of that backstory. I want to see her as a kid, turning to Valpaca, inviting her over so she can ask for more things other than the pony. Okay, well now I'm now I'm a 16-year-old girl. I want a new car, like all of that stuff. I want to see everything. I don't know if we'll get that deep into the background of this, but it leaves so much to explore. And I think that it was executed so well in this first issue that I have very, very high hopes for what comes next. And yeah, this is absolutely, the second I get done with this podcast, I will be emailing our local comic book shop owner and, making sure that this gets added to my pull list so I can continue reading it. I'm kind of sad because, this is a 1 of 6, so we get 5 more issues here. Hopefully they can jam pack a lot into that because I really want to see what's going on. But I'm really, really stoked on these creators here. I'm really stoked to see what they bring to the table and what else they can do. I'm happy that Jadzia got this, miniseries, and I hope that she continues to write for DC, crosses over to Marvel, writes some creator-owned stuff over at Image or wherever. This is a A++ all day for me. Again, really feeling the DC book just like we were with Superman. Books that I just wasn't expecting to be so good.
Man, they've got some really talented artists right now at DC.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about this, so I will shut up. But I just, man, I can't wait. So I'm excited, stoked, and we're going to take a quick break so I can shut up for a second, and we'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, all new, all different nation. We have a very special guest on the podcast this episode. Everybody, please welcome Ryan Cody, of course, comic book illustrator and colorist. I never know how to say that. I always mess it up. I say one of the two. Has worked on Family Tree, Atomic Robo, and his newest book has just come out, Death Comes For The Toymaker, out from Scout Comics. Very, very awesome read if you've not checked that out yet. And also a very successful Kickstarter that just ended a little while ago with Old Man Thunderpunch. We're definitely going to touch on that a little bit. But I want to start us out, of course. Hello, Ryan. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, all the appreciation over here. We're really excited to have you on. And yeah, what I want to lead with, I want to talk about your podcast for a second, man. I've been listening. I just discovered it. Of course, you and I had been talking through Instagram, and I saw a link for your podcast there. And I thought, what greater time to check out your podcast than now before I have you on. And I'm hooked because I'm a music guy too. I play music, really big into music and everything, and just really excited to see that out there. How long have you guys been doing that? And obviously it says, in your little synopsis there that you and Bill met at a record shop in back when you guys were 15 and everything. But I'm going to let you talk about that for a sec, because I know our listeners would absolutely love to hear that story.
Yeah, I actually have 2 podcasts. One's a comic book podcast I do with my friend Scott Godleski, who's a comic book artist. Awesome. I color his work when he not all of his work, but some of his work that he does for DC. I color those books. And we've been doing that one for a while, but it's kind of on hiatus to the fall. And then the one you're talking about is called Oh Yeah, That's Great. And so when I moved out to Arizona in 1995, I got a job at a record store, and I met this guy named Bill, and we've basically been really good friends ever since. And so I've always wanted to have a podcast, kind of where we're talking about the music, we grew up loving and the music we listen to together. So it's kind of like a way to go down memory lane, with one of my oldest friends and just kind of talk about music. So it's fun, and it's completely different than anything that I do in comics. So it's kind of, it's like, that's my hobby, and everything having to do with comics is my job. The podcast about the music, that's kind of my hobby. I love doing it. And it's only available on Spotify, sadly, because of licensing laws and stuff like that. If you want to play music, we do it through
Mm-hmm.
Spotify. But yeah, it's called Oh Yeah, That's Great.
Yeah, a really cool podcast. Of course, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's great. And I wasn't sure too if it was the complete title. Oh, yeah, that's great with Billy Cody there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I really enjoyed the format of that. It's a lot of fun. It's like a kind of brings you back to like those kind of old school radio shows where they would talk about the music as opposed to just playing a song and half the
Yeah.
time not even telling you who the song is by or the
Yeah.
name of it
Yeah.
or anything.
Yeah. That bothers me a lot when I listen to the radio now, or even if you listen to like XM or Sirius or whatever, if you're not
Mhm.
looking at the screen to tell you what the song is,
Yep.
a lot of times tracks will go by. I'll be like, oh, that's a great track. But if I don't have time to like Shazam it or something, I don't know what it is. I'm a big fan. Like when I go see live music, I'm a big fan of when the bands talk between tracks and
Mhm.
engage. And I'm a big fan when DJs do that as well. So neither one of us would consider ourselves a DJ,
Mhm.
but we put a lot of thought into the tracks we pick. And so we enjoy talking about them.
Well, yeah, it's really cool. Again, like it's great to have that kind of backstory, or even if it's not a backstory, story about a song. Hey, this is kind of invokes this feeling for me, or this is the place I was in when I heard this, or this brings up these memories, or whatever. Just really cool. I really enjoy that a lot. I think it's reminds me of those old school radio shows, and like you said, kind of that live band setting. Sometimes you go out and see a band, and you get a great story. This song was written about my mom, and she was like this when we grew up, and you're like, okay, cool.
Right.
Just has like a lot of feeling behind it and everything, as opposed to here's a cool song, listen to it, decide if you like it or not, and that's the end of it. I can really appreciate that a lot. I think that's a
Yeah,
really
thanks.
cool idea. Yeah, I'm really loving the podcast. I have to tell you, I listened to about 3 episodes so far, and the latest one that I just listened to was the soundtrack episode, like the movie soundtrack, and that's just, man, I love it so much. It's just making me feel like I'm in high fidelity and I'm just having fun with my friends, talking about music. So
Yeah, that's pretty much how we think about it when we record it. And I say on the podcast all the time, but like my favorite thing is once we settle on a topic, spending the rest of the month like just diving into that band or that topic, for the 2 episodes that we record back to back. So yeah, it's fun. I'm a research guy. I love to research stuff. So
mhm.
that's right up my alley.
Yeah, very, very cool. So, yeah, again, I just want to point that out to all of our listeners and everybody engaging with the podcast here. Make sure you guys please go check that out. It is only available on Spotify, as Ryan said, because of the copyright and music licensing and everything. But go to Spotify, make sure you check that out. Oh, yeah, that's great. It really is a great podcast. I'm not just plugging it because Ryan's on the show. I'd definitely be talking about it, whether he was or not, because it's just really cool and it's a lot of fun. And I've been listening to it. So, just wanted to get that out of the way. First thing there. I want to talk about Old Man Thunder Punch for just a second. We're
Sure.
obviously going to go into some of your other stuff and some of your backstory and everything too. But
Right.
I've got this right here front and center. This is such a fun, interesting concept. You obviously were very successful in getting your goal. You were asking like $2,000 just to bring it to life at first, and you far exceeded that. You more than doubled that. So very, very cool. Tell us a little bit about where that came from. I don't know what it was and how that was getting it funded through Kickstarter and everything.
Yeah, so I had a lull in my schedule at the
Mhm.
beginning of this year, or coming up in like March. I knew that I was I had wrapped the whole Death Comes For The Toymaker, I think, by March 1st, and so I kind of had a lull in my schedule. And I was talking to my wife, and I was talking about having to go through because when you work freelance, a lot of times you have to like look for work, post that you're looking for work, and then you get all kinds of people, responding, and I got to shuffle through these responses.
Yep.
And a lot of times it's with people that I've either haven't worked with before, or maybe they're newer to the industry. And I'm at a point now where it's like I don't want to keep taking chances on new unknown stuff. I want to be secure. I'm older and I just want a job that's going to be like secure, pays me on time, is fun to work on. And
Mhm.
so funneling through all that, I was talking to my wife about, just the general stress and kind of bummerness that is. And she was telling me like, well, just don't take that job. Like, just don't take that job. Let's do something else with your time if you want. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll do another Kickstarter and I'll just do a simple, 20-page book. I already have another 9 pages of this story already done, or a story with this character already done. from last year. So I'm like, okay, I'll slap that together in like a 36 page, book or whatever. And that was kind of the gist of it. Was it was a way to give myself something to do for 2 months. And then, of course, as soon as the Kickstarter launched and funded, I picked up like another job and all this stuff. So, of course, that's going to happen.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just a fun story, and it's something that like there's no preconceived notions of how I can tell that story or how I can draw that book. Like as someone who's kind of more of an indie guy than not, especially when drawing comics, I'm never going to draw X-Men. So I might as well draw what I want to draw and color in a way that I want to draw when no one can give me notes and no one has, like, if I want to experiment like crazy and have each page look different than the next, this is the project I can do that on. So that's kind of my goal going into it. And, I got to learn to get out of my way when it comes to that kind of stuff, because then I do get caught in a mindset of like, oh, this should be done this way. So it's really an experimental book for me, both drawing and coloring wise. And I'm having a lot of fun working on it. So yeah, again, it's something I would like to do, maybe one of these a year, a 30 to 50 page book a year, something to have on my convention table, because, when I do work for DC or when I do work for other publishers, I don't always get like a ton of comps. So if I go to one show and I sell my 5 copies of my newest DC book that I colored, then my table's empty. But if I have my own book, 4 years from now, I could have 3 or 4 volumes of that, in perpetuity on my shelf, and just kind of build my own kind of side brand,
Yeah.
So yeah, and just again, have fun doing it. No expectations. I'm not trying to please anybody but myself. And again, people seem to be really responsive to it. I think I don't know, people just like it's very a Hellboy method is what I'm trying to accomplish with this. And it's very much people that like that kind of book are going to like this kind of book, like an angry dude just fighting monsters. Hopefully I can bring more depth to the story than that, but if that's the baseline, I think people would still be happy with it.
Yeah, I'm seeing people are really enjoying it. I'm seeing great reviews about it. Everything that I've checked out is awesome. I'm loving the art there, but of course, I'm already a fan of your art, so that's gonna work for me. But I would love to point out here, you said you're more of an indie guy. You're never going to be working on the next X-Men book. I don't know, man. You ever read Max Bemis and Mike Walsh's Worst X-Men Ever? Like, your art fits in perfectly with that. You never know. Maybe not something that you're looking to do, but you never know what falls in your lap, I guess, in comics.
Right. If Marvel ever brings back their Strange Tales anthology, maybe I could finally get like a Shatterstar story in there or something.
Oh man, I'd love to see that. That would be very amazing. But yeah, very cool. And as I said, already that particular Kickstarter has already ended and was very successful. You were able to get that out and hit stretch goals and everything else. So if you guys can, find any way to read that, definitely check it out. I don't know if there's any other ways if you didn't contribute to the Kickstarter or whatever, but
it'll be available on my website once the Kickstarter fulfills any leftover copies. I'm going to overprint, but I'm also going to, like I said, save a bulk for when I do conventions. But I'll have some available through my website. There'll be a little bit more money, but not incredibly much more money. But obviously, I want to give preference to the people who supported the Kickstarter.
Yeah, absolutely. that seems only fair. Yeah, but let's go into your backstory a little bit. I'm sure this is something that you've done plenty of times before. I do like to just kind of get that out for anybody who might be new, a little unfamiliar with your work or whatever. When did you first get into art? When did you first get into illustrating? How did you break into comics? All that fun story.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I grew up kind of reading comics. I don't remember when I was first exposed. It was kind of like, one memory I have was going to this barber shop with my dad. My dad was he's a former Marine. And so he'd get his hair cut every week, like clockwork. And I would go with him. And the barber that he went to had just some old comics. I mean, this would have been the 80s. So those comics are probably from the 70s. And he just have them laying around the barber shop. So I would read just random issues. And then, back then you could get comics at Circle K, 7-Eleven. So we'd pick up comics whenever I saw them. And then I was getting comics from the PX whenever we were on base or whatever. And then I finally went to like my first direct market store, my comic book store. And the first book that really clinched my comic reading was Excalibur #1. I love that book. So
Me too.
so that yeah, so then I was like, I love this. Like, I wish this has got to be the best thing ever. Just being able to tell these stories and stuff like that. And back then I didn't really I knew Chris Claremont wrote everything and other artists drew it, but I always think all comics are storytelling to me. So I was like, I just want to make comics in whatever fashion I can make them. And then I would start to trace panels from like a Walt Simonson, like X Factor or something like that. And then in high school, I drew comics, but then I kind of, I was getting like rejection letters, obviously. I was like a 18-year-old coming out during the image days. And that might have actually been the easiest time ever to break in, but even at that point, I wasn't ready. So I kind of gave up on comics. And then when I was maybe in my mid-20s, I went to art school and I saw Powers. I hadn't been to a comic shop in like 3 or 4 years, and Powers came out. And I was just kind of had that moment where I was like, oh, this guy, Mike Oeming, kind of draws like I draw. Like it's similar, like kind of how the Batman cartoon was, not like Jim Lee or Mark Silvestri. So I was like, oh, I think I might be able to do this. So then I started getting back into it. And when I came out of art school, I had a couple pitches, linked up with a couple writers via social media. This was so long ago. This might have been like MySpace. I don't even remember how we met. But yeah, I pitched a couple books, and my first book got picked up in 2006, I think. So I think my first book that I ever drew came out in 2006, late 2006. So dipped my toes in indie comics for a couple of years, and then around 2011, I made like the full-time kind of switch to comics.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, hey, that's a pretty damn successful story. If if I can weigh in on that, we have a lot of listeners who, as I'm sure you do on your podcast as well, who are aspiring creators. A lot. The comic book community is a very involved community. Of course, a lot of people looking to break in. A lot of people, asking those questions, or maybe just looking for answers. Without asking. Maybe listening to podcasts, looking at subreddits. All of those things to say, how do I break in? How did this guy break in, or whatever. So really cool to hear, from basically 2006, you kind of starting in comic books, and then by 2011, it's your full-time gig. Like, it's what you're doing to, I don't know, put dinner on the table, put a roof over your head. So very, very cool. And like you said, you're not out there trying to write the latest X-Men comic or anything like that. This is more stuff that's a little bit more personal to you, and a little less managed by a giant corporation like Marvel or DC or something like that. So yeah, very cool success story. I love to hear those things. Like I said, a lot of our listeners have those questions. All right, you talk to a lot of these creators. How are they breaking in? That's always what they want to hear. What's their success story? So yeah, just really cool stuff there. I really, really like that. This is probably going to be a little bit of an oddball question for you, so I don't know if you have an answer. A lot of times when I ask this question, this is something that I don't bring up every time I talk to a creator, but I'll pull it out of the weeds every now and again to see how different people feel. The most popular answer is my own stuff. I want to create my own thing, and I'm sure that's your answer too. But if you can dig deep, and if there's anything, is there anything in the back of your head? Is there any dream project, just something that you would love to work on, whether that be from a specific publisher, or like another, say, writer you really admire, or book, or anything like that? Is there any dream project that you'd love to work on?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, there's books that are touchstones for me. I mentioned Hellboy earlier. I would love to, especially now as I get more into coloring, I always talk about how like there's certain artists I want to color, but they already have everyone wants to work with them. So it's like, it's tough to, but like, obviously if I could color something, or even draw a Hellboy book, I think I could handle a Hellboy book. I think I would enjoy that immensely. Or maybe even an offshoot, like a Sledgehammer book or something like that. I would love anything just to, I think what Mike's done is incredible. And I think the Hellboy universe is kind of incredible into how how it presents itself, and how it's just different from all other comics. Kind of like there are like I mentioned earlier, we refer to publishing schedules as a Hellboy schedule. We're going to do a mini series, take a break, do a mini series. That's the Hellboy schedule.
Yep.
So Hellboy. I worked with Brian Bendis. I colored a book that he wrote at DC last year. If he ever wanted to, if I could ever work with him and Mike on Powers, if they ever did another volume of Powers and I could color that, I would be in heaven because that book means so much to me. I think The Authority is the greatest 12 issue. The first 12 issues of The Authority, I think, is the best 12 issue run of comics maybe ever. So I would love if they did a proper reboot of The Authority to maybe color that book. But my absolute dream project is probably, I assume you're several years younger than me, if not more than several years younger than me. But I've always been obsessed with the Bionic Six, which is a cartoon that was out in the 80s. And so if I could ever reboot the Bionic Six, I would love to write. And I mean, I would do that whole book. I would, if I could get paid to do Bionic Six, it'd be absolute heaven. It's fantastic. It's Fantastic Four with Bionics, but with all the cool shit that the X-Men have. You know, it's like a great mashup of everything.
Yeah, very cool. I'm a little familiar. Trust me, the camera must just be good because I usually look like shit, and I'm like I'm about to hit 40. But anyways, I love that. I'm a little familiar, you know, just by the name. It's not something that I can say that I remember very well, but you know, you're saying that, and we just talked to So Lee a little while ago, a few episodes back, and you know, she's now doing Maleficent over at Dynamite, and she's writing and illustrating that book. And I mean, hey man, you never know. Dynamite's doing some awesome stuff right now. Hopefully a Dynamite rep will hear this episode and be like, all right, we got to get Ryan Cody on the line. He's doing a Bionic book.
I mean, Mad Cave just announced that they have the Gotcha Man rights and what else? Flash Gordon rights. So I was kind of hoping they would announce some Bionic Six stuff, but you know, I can wait.
Yeah, whenever the opportunity comes, here you are. So yeah, that's super cool. I love hearing stuff like that, and I love an honest answer. Again, a lot of times, and I mean, trust me, I believe everybody that I've talked to, you know, the answer is always, I want to come up with my own thing, and I want to push that. I get it. Like I agree. But yeah, sometimes it's just so fun to hear, you know, those kind of stories. Those, hey, well, I really grew up on you know, Spider-Man. I picked up issue 42 from the newsstand, and I've been hooked ever since then. If I could get on a Spider-Man, you know, those kind of stories are very engaging for the audience and the stuff that we love to hear too. So really cool answer. I love that. I know a lot of our listeners are going to be going out and checking out the Bionic Six now. So you just plugged that. So that's very cool.
Yeah, like I'm not precious really about comics. Like there's gigs that I do that are just gigs, and then there's gigs that I do that I care about.
Yep.
But yeah, like I would be happy to do, like I said, draw a page a week of Old Man Thunder Punch and fill the rest of my schedule with work for hire. I'm a big like you mentioned the intro, I colored Family Tree.
Yep.
You know, Family Tree, I think I was the only creative on that book that didn't have an ownership stake, maybe. I was just strictly work for hire. And I loved it. I wasn't treated any different by the rest of the team. I put as much work into that as the rest of the team did. We all made a really fun and really great book. I have no problem just being a work for hire guy. If there's a contract and I sign it and that's my job, I'm thrilled to just be working in comics and sort of, you know, that's every month that I can keep doing this is a good month.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. So it's a very fun field to break into, and of course, like we know from, I mean, there's a lot of controversy around comics lately. There's a lot going on with AI, which I do have a couple of questions about a little bit later on. And then there's, you know, things as big as like the hashtag that was trending a few weeks ago, comics broke me and everything like that. So there is. You know, comics are hard. It's hard to navigate that field, of course. And this, you know, just coming from somebody who talks about comics. So definitely not a creator by any means, but it's definitely something hard to break into. And of course, as we know, you really have to get yourself out there and work on these projects and market yourself and everything. But it can be very rewarding as well. As you said, it's something that you really enjoy doing and you're very happy with what you're doing, and you just hope to keep doing that. So really, really cool. I want to ask again, this is a little bit of an oddball question. If you don't have an answer, that's fine. Is there ever anything that you just would be opposed to working on? And we don't have to go into any creators or publishers or anything that specific, but say I don't know, DC, called you up and said, "Hey, we want you to work on the new Justice League book or something," and you're like, I don't know, that's not really my vibe or anything. Is there anything out there where you're just wouldn't work on?
I don't think so, because yeah, I'm really accepting that this is again a work for hire business. It's not I'm not a fine artist. I'm a production artist.
Mhm.
It's a production artist based business. You got to produce to get paid.
Yep.
Schedules got to get made. That kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So none of that really bothers me. I mean, it's definitely, if there's passion in a project, or if it's someone's dream, if someone else on the team, if they're really passionate about it, then I want to do my best work I can for them. If I
Mhm.
was working on a book where everything was just just punch the numbers, or if it was like right now we're in another writer strike in Hollywood, and so there's going to be a ton of writers, screenwriters, who are going to be like, oh, I'll just make a comic,
Mhm. Mhm.
because in their mind that's easier. And so there's going to be a lot of those kind of like what I consider maybe like passionless projects, or comics is my fallback. I developed it for this, but we'll turn it into a comic. Those are always kind of a bummer to work on, but so they can also sometimes be the best paying gigs. Um, so no, I mean, I don't hold the high road on a lot of stuff, but definitely if it's definitely like, oh, we're just going to put out this book because we can put out this book, and we're just going to rehash some TV scripts or something like that, those gigs are bummers. But even a bummer gig, pays the bills. So
Yep.
it's just how many sighs am I going to do when I'm working on the page is kind of how I how I base. And my studio mate, I have a studio mate, and he'll be the first to say, like, I sigh a lot, but I could be sighing a lot more.
Yep.
So yeah, I try to, but I know there's nothing like content wise. I believe every story should be told if it wants to be told, and it's a valid story. So none of that really bothers me, and I'm not against, like, quote unquote selling out either. I will, like I said, it's a business, and I will be a part of that business as much or as little as I want to be.
Mhm. Well, I love that because, selling out, of course, being, when we're way younger and stuff, you always think, I'll never sell out. And then you get a little older and you're like, well, what does selling out really even mean?
Yeah,
I'm not digging in people's trash cans to eat. Like, you have a job, like that is selling out.
right.
We mentioned music at the top of this, and we were talking about your podcast that everyone should definitely be going to check out on Spotify, by the way. But yeah, growing up in the punk rock scene and everything, that was a big thing. We'll never sell out. We'll never compromise our vision to this music or anything. I mean, dude, I play bar gigs now in a top 40 current pop cover band, so I
Yeah.
love selling out. It's my
No,
favorite
it's
thing to do right now. But
yeah. I
um,
mean, being like the suffering artist, who like lives a righteous life and only does what they want to do. Like that doesn't. I have 3 kids. I have a
yep.
wife. Like that's not, like, I have to live in this world. Taxes exist, rent exists, and nothing's
It
getting cheap.
certainly is. Yeah.
Nothing's getting cheaper. So, yeah, I don't. Selling out, just the people who complain about people selling out, they're just mad because they're not making any money.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's again, it's different if I started doing like comics I didn't care about and I actively hated,
Mhm.
but it paid the most, and I didn't believe in it, and I thought it was absolute trash. That's selling out.
Yep.
But getting a page rate for the work I already do for a Batman book or Justice League. I mean, I colored a Justice League Legion book. That's not selling out. That's
Nope.
getting a good. That's getting a good page rate
Yep.
from a major corporation. So yeah, I don't feel bad about that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely agreed. Let's talk about your book that just came out. Like I said, from Scout Comics here, Death Comes for the Toymaker, and I will point out to you, of course, we're just a audio podcast, so the audience can't see this, but I was very very happy because I'm here in Florida. Not a I don't know, not a big comic book scene around me or anything like that. My local comic book shop is pretty good about ordering titles and everything, at least having representation. But from Scout, I would say 1 or 2 copies of each book. I was very, very happy to see this on the shelf and be able to pick that up. Just a really, really cool, really fun book, actually. I didn't know what to expect from the title. And then one of the employees at the comic book shop, saw me picking it up, and he said, "Man, you're going to love this book." Me and this guy, always talk back and forth. He always asked me, "What are you guys covering on the podcast this week? What are you doing?" And so forth. And when he saw this book in my pile, he went, "Dude, I read that last night, and I know you, and I know you're going to love that story." Which is, again, one of the reasons why I reached out to you specifically and said, "Hey, let's have you on the podcast. If we could talk about this book or whatever." I love this book. I think it's so cool. Such a cool idea. I want to get your take on it. How did this come about? How did you get involved? Of course, feel free to answer as much or as little as you want. How did
Sure.
you get involved with Dakota Brown? Just give us the story.
So I actually had to research because we've been working on that book for a long time
Okay.
because again, when you work kind of freelance and especially indie comics freelance, that book had to go on the back burner a couple times as other gigs came in and stuff like that, other more time sensitive kind of gigs. And so, I went through my emails because I know I've been working on it for a while, and it looks like Dakota reached out to me in December of 2020.
Wow.
And so I don't remember if he posted an ad on one of the boards I used when I was looking for work, or if he just messaged me through my website. I can't remember, and it's not in that email, but it's basically he reached out. He wanted to do a pitch. So that's basically how it works. Like, I did the artwork for the pitch. He pitched it, and then most times that nothing goes from there. So I've done lots of pitches over the years, and maybe this is a bad reflection on me, but I've done lots of pitches over the years that don't really advance past the pitch stage. So this is kind of honestly, my original thought was like, oh, this is like a way for me to get like a week's worth of work or something like that, and then like, Godspeed to Dakota. And then he emails me like 6 months later, and he's like, oh, I got a publisher that's interested in it. Do you want to go forward? And I was like, okay, sure. So we did it. And that publisher ended up being Scout, who I colored a book called Midnight Western Theater that for David Hahn and Louis Southard.
Man, I love that book. You don't hear that
Okay.
title brought up enough. Such a cool book, but yeah.
Yeah. So I colored that book, and that was out through Scout too. And then now I color David Hahn on another book called Impossible Jones that Scout has released some of their volumes as well. So it just kind of worked out that way. So then I picked up again, 6-7 months later on the book and slowly chipped away on it. We did, I think it's a 5-issue book, 6. I'm terrible at this. Might be 6, might be 5, but Scout has this program called Nonstop where they release one single issue and then they release the trade. And so that's what this is. We're in that program is what I am led to believe. So the first issue is out now, and then I think the trade will be out at some point before Christmas.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. I don't want to give too much of the book away here or anything. I definitely highly suggest to everybody listening, you seek this out. It might be, depending on your shop and where you are logistically and all of that. Hopefully your shop carries a good amount of Scout comics and large quantity of them and everything, especially this being a number 1. But yeah, man, this book ends on such a cool cliffhanger, and you just want to know. It's just such a great cliffhanger. There's so much packed into this first issue, visually and narratively, and the way that it just wraps up at that in there. I just wanted to turn the page, man. I just wanted to know what was going to happen next. And of course, like you said, now I got to trade wait, but I am okay with that because this is absolutely worth it. And that final page just makes it my anticipation level just through the roof. So I cannot wait to check the rest of that out. And I absolutely will be. But yeah, very cool. Look, I'm going to go backtrack just a little bit.
Sure.
I talked Family Tree. You talked Family Tree a little bit. How was it working with Phil Hester and Jeff Lemire on Family Tree? That has to be, I mean, to me at least, those are some pretty big names. Must be some great people to work for, or not. I don't know. But how was it to work with them on that book?
It was great. I've known Phil for a long time. We
Mm-hmm.
were introduced by a mutual friend, a writer named Shannon Denton, who's been
Mm-hmm.
around comics for a long time. But Shannon's always been great about kind of introducing people to other people when you're all hanging out together. So
Yeah.
I must have met Phil, I don't know, 12 years ago or something like that. And then, he knew I wanted to get more into coloring. And then, so, he had something in an anthology for Aftershock a few
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to color this 6-page thing I did for Aftershock? They'll pay you X amount, but you want to do it." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be happy to do it." And then, but also I know Phil, so I'm like, "Oh, this might be lead to something else. This is Phil's way of being like, how are we going to work together?"
Uh-huh.
And so I did that book, and then, or I did that short story, sorry. And then maybe a month or two later, he just sent me an email and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this book with." This book was announced a year ago, at San Diego, and I'm finally getting around to drawing the pages. Like, do you want to color it?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he had shown the pages I did previously for the Aftershock anthology to Jeff, and Jeff was like, "Fine." Like, Jeff's a really great creator in the fact that he creates so much, but he also understands, like, we're gonna do this book, and then I'm moving on to something else. I'm moving on, like, it's churning content, but always with the best kind of intentions and the best storytelling intentions. It's never just like, shitting out stuff. It's always really high quality stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff is also going to be like, well, if Phil likes the guy, then I like the guy. I'm not going to tell Phil he can't have this colorist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it worked. And our inker on that book was Eric Gabster. I had met Eric at a con, so I knew Eric a little bit. I knew Phil really well. It was just super comfortable. Jeff was really great. Like, he just kind of let us do what we did on the art side. And it was just a joy. Like I said, I mean, just being able to, like, work on Phil pages all the time, and text Phil, and just kind of do shows with Phil after the book came out.
Yep.
We've done a couple shows in the Midwest, and they kind of put you together. They're really thoughtful that way, and it's awesome. I'm really happy Phil brought me on board, but I'm also just real happy I got to work with Phil. He's one of my favorite dudes, and he did the variant cover for Old Man Thunder Punch. Like, he's just he's one of the best. Everyone loves Phil. We all call him Uncle Phil. He's literally one of the best dudes in comics. Every professional, if you know him, you love him. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great time. And again, it's people love Jeff Lemire, obviously. So it's just kind of like just a really fun project to work on.
Yeah, a really great situation to be in. I can only imagine that one. I was actually introduced to Family Tree through uh I'm trying to remember exactly when it came out. I want to say 2019, but might have been a little earlier than that.
I
I
think
can't remember when.
Yeah, we took a pandemic pause for a couple months.
Okay.
So I think the first maybe 5 or 6 came out, monthly like they're supposed to, and then I think we had a
Mhm.
break, and then we kind of trudged along for the last half of the book. But yeah,
Yeah,
between 19 and 21, I think
yeah,
the issues came out.
that's what I'm thinking too. I think the first issue came out in 2019, if
Yeah.
my memory is correct. But I was actually picking up books for a friend. Another friend owned a local comic shop. I'd go there and pick up my books. I had another guy who wasn't able to come to the shop on Wednesday for new comic book day, and every week I'd pick up books for him. And this one particular week, his stack included Family Tree, so I picked it up for him, and later headed back home and everything. And then I was like, well, I wonder what this book is. I like Jeff Lemire, whatever. I cracked it open and I was like, I was hooked, man. And that's how I was first introduced to you, of course. And I was just like, wow, what a cool book. Added it to my pull list, of course. And I love the book now. So just an amazing book. If anybody out there has not checked out Family Tree, you're missing out. Definitely go grab that. However you can, single issues, trade, whatever. Just really, really great. Comicsology, whatever you got to do. My next question, maybe a little deeper. I would like to preface with we had Raphael Albuquerque on a couple of weeks ago, and we talked to him about the same question, and it kind of went all over the place. So whatever your thoughts are, your thoughts, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But this is absolutely, I like to kind of say this is never to negate what anybody does in comics or belittle their work or anything like that. let me just point that out before I ask the question. I since you're an illustrator, you probably have some thoughts on Marvel Studios at least using AI in the opening credits to Secret Invasion.
I do.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest and say I do watch the show. I know
Sure.
the stand I should take is I don't.
Well,
But
I watched the show
but
too, initially.
Winter Soldier is my favorite MCU movie, and
Oh
so
man, mine too. That's wonderful to
yeah.
hear.
So I thought this was going to be, and it is. It's
Mhm.
right up my alley.
Yep.
I like superhero movies that are smaller in scope,
Yes.
with less glowy shit in the sky. So I knew I wanted to watch it, but yeah, it is. I mean, not only does it just look terrible, it's the precedent it's set is terrible
Mhm.
because they could have just used comic panels. They could have hired proper animators for that. They could have done a lot, and it's a super bummer. But it also, you have to remember that Marvel is not Marvel. Marvel is Disney.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Disney is not the Disney that it's not the same Disney it used to be. Like, they're in the IP business, they're in the production business, they're in the money making business. Uh, DC is not DC. It's Warner Brothers.
Yep.
It's HBO. It's Cinemax. They're in the money making business. So the people that made the decisions to do that intro for Secret Invasion have nothing to do with Marvel Comics.
Yeah, they're not comic book guys.
Yes, and so I can think of it in both. I separate things very easily. Um, and I understand if you're the corporation and you want to make money, you make money. That's just a baffling decision to me because it doesn't look better because they used AI,
Yeah.
and it was just cheaper. And when you're Disney, to make the decision to do something that's just cheaper doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's a super bummer. I don't know what I don't know what other creators think about it other than it sucks. Uh, but to me it's just a tone deaf decision to make when
Mhm.
you could have paid a small animation studio a little bit more probably, and you would have got something way better.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, like I said, we talked to Raphael about that. Also talked to Jenna Cha, who just recently illustrated and co-wrote The Sickness. It's it's a weird area to talk about right now. The reason that we bring that up, of course, not only just to hear everybody's thoughts on the matter, but I kind of brought up the fact that, or not fact, the opinion that maybe whenever, I don't know, way back in the day when Photoshop was first coming out and digital
Right.
rendering and stuff like that was happening versus hand drawing everything, was probably looked at as whoa, I'm stepping away from this. I hand draw everything. I'm not doing anything on a computer or whatever. And and I asked Raphael, could you possibly see this as a tool? Now Raphael was very straightforward with his answer and said, yes, at 100%, I can see this as a tool. I can see people embracing this as a tool. But the problem is that what this is capable of and how unregulated it is and how, it just opens a door. And it was a very interesting conversation to have. And again, I'm not looking to recapture that with anybody else or anything, but it is just interesting to hear thoughts as far as, do
Yeah.
we see this as a tool? Do we see this as a hindrance? Do we see this as a threat? And what angle that comes from?
Yeah, and my answer, as far as AI in general goes, I think the first thing they're going to be able to do to where it's almost imperceptible, I actually think, is coloring. So as someone
Mhm.
who has just started coloring more or less full time in the last few years, but someone who's been in the industry for almost 20,
Yep.
it's concerning to me because I can see how they can easily map that, and get to that point where they can just color a book through running it through a prompt. But I'm not a young guy getting into coloring at 20 now and hoping to do this for the next 30 to 40 years,
Sure.
So if I get phased out of my coloring jobs to AI, it's not the end of my world.
Mhm.
So I'm less concerned because just like everything, I'm less concerned because it affects me less, which is a terrible way to say things, but it's how everyone judges things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think they're taking over. I think they could take over inking next. I mean, back in the early 2000s, we were printing books straight from pencils. Kind
Mhm.
of got away from that for a while. It's, and now that everyone almost works digitally. I think inkers and colorists are kind of going to be the dudes who go first, and dudettes, gender neutral term. But I think we're going to be the ones to go first, and I think pencilers will be the ones to go last, because that's where the layout and the storytelling, the majority of it is done in pencils, and so I think that's going to be the hardest for them to replicate.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that in 10 years an AI colored book is going to look as good as a book colored by Tamara Bonvillain or Matt Wilson or something looks
Mhm.
now. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I think the people that are buying comics and the people that are making comics or producing comics, especially, it's going to be almost imperceptible. It's going to be very few readers will be able to tell the difference.
Mhm.
And so I do think we're on the cusp of becoming dinosaurs. And I don't know. Again, I don't know what to do with that. As far as, and maybe it'll swing the other way, and being an indie guy will be super beneficial, or being someone who does, maybe that'll be a selling point. Like, oh, well, this book is colored by AI and it's
Mhm.
produced by a corporation, but this book is made by 3 or 4 individuals who are doing the work, stylus to tablet, or whatever.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that will become a selling point. Boutique comics will become more and more common and more important, I think, to comics as we move forward, and not 15 Batman titles.
Yes, and I agree
Comics
with
will
you there.
survive. Yeah, comics will survive because of the people that are making comics, not the corporations that are putting out comics.
Sure. I think that once you kind of dig down into it and think about it deeply like that, at least for somebody like me, a huge comic book collector, a huge fan of comics, and somebody who reads, multiple comics a day every day, uh, I look for that. That's what I look for on the front of my comics. Who wrote this? Who illustrated it? Who colored it? Who lettered it? Those things are important to me. They're very important. Now, if I'm starting to see less and less of that, if I'm starting to see this was written by this person, there's no artist credit or anything, I'm going to start to drift away from that and look for the things that have that on it. My some of my biggest, some of my favorite artists, are like Mike Allred, Bill Sienkiewicz, people who I don't even feel like you can recreate that in the AI fashion.
Right,
Mike
right,
works with his wife, Laura, and uh, she's his colorist, pretty much always, and they pump out these amazing things that I don't even feel like anybody else could step in and color, much
right.
less an AI. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that that name on that book and the credits and the comic and everything are very, very important to a lot of us, and I think that that's how that will be judged in the future. I stand with any creators who are opposed to AI doing anything like that. And hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully it becomes a little bit more of a tool, a little more of a regulated thing, and we don't even have that bleak kind of future. But it's always worth just bringing up and asking about. Um, Look, Ryan, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I've already taken 46 minutes of it. But I greatly appreciate you coming on. It's been super insightful to have you here and have your thoughts and opinions and your experience on comics. The last little bit of questioning that I want to ask before I ask you to pump any projects you got coming out or direct people to where they can find more about you is what have you been watching, listening to, and reading this week? If anything, I know you're a busy guy, so
Sure.
no problem if you haven't been.
I'm one of those, like, some of the worst creators where I don't read a lot of comics.
Okay.
I read a lot of crime fiction is what I read.
Mm-hmm.
So S.A. Cosby has a new book out called All the Sinners Bleed. It's a great Southern
Awesome.
crime book I just wrapped up. I do watch TV, but it's mostly soccer. So I watch like world football and stuff. I don't We are obsessed over the Bear. So we're wrapping up season 2 of the Bear,
Very
which anyone who listens to this who wants to work in comics, it's a great allegory to that.
cool.
The main character is a chef, and they're putting together a restaurant. And at one point, his cousin tells him like, "Oh, it must be so great to love what you do for a living." And he explains like, no, it's miserable. Like doing something that you love to do for a living is terrible, because it takes something you love and it makes it work, and it puts responsibilities on something you love, like if you like to go play softball and you're on your company's softball team, if your job hinged on how you performed at that softball game, it would make that softball game suck. So it's a great it encapsulates sort of like working in a field that you love, but it's work, man. It's work, and sometimes it's work you can't just shut off. Like me and some of my comic friends, we often talk about how much easier life would be if we just had like a 9-to-5 job that you could just mentally check out of when you got home, and I'm not talking about like a management or higher up. I'm talking about like working a shift at like a grocery store or something like that, as like the low level dude, like the bagger at the grocery store. Like how great must he feel when he leaves work and he doesn't have to think about work till he checks back into work the next day. Meanwhile, like I turn in a project, I got to check my emails at night, make sure there's no, I got deadlines, and I got print deadlines, and I got actual deadline. Like it's insane. So the Bear is great for that. So I highly recommend the Bear. If someone's not watching it, I recommend Southern crime fiction that I'm obsessed with right now. And just general, like I said, world football. Like I support Everton in the Premier League, so I'm a glutton for punishment in every phase of my life. But yeah, I don't. And I am watching Secret Invasion, and I think I might be 1 or 2 behind on that. And I don't really. It's not really doing everything. It's not really doing much for me. But it's Samuel L. Jackson goes a long way in carrying that, and I'm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I like old and middle-aged men getting angry. Apparently, that's my whole brand. So
awesome. Well, yeah. Again, Ryan, been a pleasure having you on. And like I said, please tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can find your projects. Like I said, Scout Comics, Death Comes For The Toymaker. You can grab it in your local shops now if they still have copies available. So make sure you don't walk to your local comic book shop and pick that up. But yeah, tell everybody where they can find the rest of your stuff, and if you have anything else upcoming, you can talk.
Your store should be able to still order it. So you can just tell them you want to order it, and they can put it in their reorder, or you can go to scoutcomics.com, I think is their website, and you can order it through there. That's the only way to get my cover. Apparently I have a store exclusive cover through Scout.
Oh, great.
But also just my website is super75studios.com, and everything links from there. All my projects, all the information. I don't update it that often, but you can get to my Twitter from there. You get to my Instagram from there. So yeah, super75studios.com, and then super75studios.com substack is also where you can get my info. So pretty simple. If you just Google me, comic creator Ryan Cody, there's only one of me. Don't misspell it, because there is a Ryan Cody.
I was gonna say, just as a side note, and I have this sitting right here for not this reason, but I picked up Hunt You to the End, which we had reviewed on the show a couple of weeks back, and I've got issue 2 number here. And I said, wait a second, Ryan worked on this as well? I don't remember. And then I was like, oh, Katie, okay.
Yeah, Ryan, Katie, and I met and had a beer maybe like 8 or 9 years ago in California, and we always joke about doing a book together. When I first started doing color work for DC, some of my comps were sent to him one time because they just punched in the computer and it just autofilled Katie, and so it's like, yeah, he's my nemesis / it's a funny coincidence. So.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, Ryan, greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time today. Thanks for talking to us here on the all new, all different #1 comics podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure. And we greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we'll talk again soon, I hope.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
All right.
And we are back with episode number 28 of the all-new, all-different #1 comics podcast. Sorry about that very awkward interview. Bob had to step out of the room for a moment while I conducted it. So that was just me and Ryan. But either way, now Bob and I are both back on the cast. Sorry, scheduling conflict is all I can say.
It happens.
Yeah, it sure does. Bob, hit him with the new books that are coming out next week.
Well, first, before I do that, I gotta say my disclaimer.
Oh man, one of these days I'm gonna get a song in there.
That you need a siren before I say disclaimer.
It's disclaimer time.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But a button would be better.
Yeah, sure.
But so these are just some of the comics coming out next week because I just read off of the Key Collector app. So for a full list of comics, I suggest going to a different website, Midtown especially. Midtown's
great. Hit up your local comic book shop. Ask them what they got.
You can do that also. So starting from Marvel, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 30.
The solicitation refers to Spider-Man's newest ally, which likely refers to Mary Jane's new identity as Jackpot, although Marvel press release states that she appears as her new superhero persona in issue number 31.
Yes. Sticking with Marvel, we have Venom number 23.
Man, this one's got some high ratios. This has the reintroduction of Toxin, the latest terrifying version of the character. First appearance of a new symbiote, and likely to be an important issue with many variants that have high ratios up to 1 in 200.
Yes. We'll go with that.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
We also have Ultimate Invasion number 2. Yes, the second issue.
God, I can't wait for this one. This I'm very, very excited about. I'm so sad that it's only a 4-part, though.
Yes, I know. We have Avengers number 3.
A first full team appearance of Ashen combined. Sorry. Lord, Bob, I won't be able to say any of these names. Either way, we got a first full team appearance.
Yes, and I've used up my ability to say names today, so if I try, I will not be able to. And the next few books are going to be very DC heavy. First, we have Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor, number 1.
This is a 3-issue prestige format series that tells the story of Superman's efforts to save a dying Lex Luthor.
I'm not exactly sure what a prestige format series is, but I'm guessing an oversized, maybe?
Yeah, maybe something like that. I don't know. I hear the term. I never question it. Whatever.
We have Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic number 1.
This one sounds like a lot of fun. Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic. It's got the first appearance of Kyle the Catboy.
Yes. And then the next few will be Night Terrors Heavy.
Oh man, I'm so scared. Let's do it.
We get Night Terrors Harley Quinn number 1.
That's a cover.
Yes. We get Night Terrors Titans number 1.
That's the first team appearance of the Terror Titans, different than the earlier team with the same name.
I didn't know there was a team with the same name.
Who knows? I guess so.
We have Night Terrors Detective Comics number 1.
This one's got first appearance of a trio of nightmarish characters, one of which is a body fused with a robotic batsuit.
Okay. We have Night Terrors Action Comics number 1.
Nothing fun to say about that.
Only that it's 2 issues, so it'll be fun that it only lasts for 2 issues. And then finally, we have Night Terrors Angel Breaker number 1.
This has a first appearance of Nanny Gillo, a legendary slasher. And I did see that this one was being written by Tim Seeley, so I'm interested to see how that plays out.
I think Jason Voorhees would have something to say about that. If he talked in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he did once he went to space or something, right? Hell, somewhere like that. I don't know.
Oddly enough, he did not talk in space.
In space, no one can hear you talk if you're Jason because you don't talk.
Surprisingly, you can hear everybody scream when they're about to die.
Well, fair enough, I guess. Something had to happen in that movie, so why not that? Kids, we are going to go to our lovely Wheel of Names.com wheel. and spin for next week's book. And just to let you know, we've got Alice Never After on the board, Murder by Mail, Rebel Girls, and The Ribbon Queen.
Which I did not name any of them.
Sure.
So that's why you should go to Midtown.
All independent books. That's right. Let's spin this thing and see where it lands. Bob, it looks like next week we will be doing Murder by Mail, issue number 1.
Interesting.
Yeah, this should be very, very interesting. I won't even say anything about the book. We'll just leave it like that and see what happens. Should be very fun though.
So we will definitely be emailing our local comic shop.
Yeah,
so
make sure we get a couple of copies of that one. Yeah, and you guys playing along at home might want to do the same thing. Get a hold of your local comic book shops. Make sure you get a copy of Murder by Mail number 1 so you can go over it with us. Tell Bob how he screwed up the name and how I got my part of the review wrong. But yes, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the all new, all different number 1 comics. Please check us out on social media. We are at ANAD_number 1 comics podcast on Instagram. You can check us out on Twitter at ANADNO comic pod and TikTok at ANAD number 1 comics pod. We are also on YouTube under the comic book channel. This and every single week, all you have to do is use our lovely hashtag that Bob came up with all by himself. That's hashtag all new, all different nation in a post on social media of your choice to be entered in our weekly giveaway where you can win a copy of this sexy Hawkgirl number 1 book.
Everybody knows how to hashtag at this point,
yes.
So just do it.
Just do it. That's right. We're not ripping off Nike. We're ripping off DC because we're giving away a copy of DC's Dawn of DC Hawkgirl issue number 1 away for free. We'll see you guys next time. If I can find the, there we go. I'm gonna, if I can find the, there we go. I'm gonna, if I can find the, there we go. I'm gonna, if I can find the, there we go. I'm gonna, if I can find the, there we go. I'm gonna, if I can find the, there we go. I'm gonna, if I can